Well, I welcome you to the beginning of this 8-session course, and thank you for inviting me into your lives in this very important arena of parenting. I hope this experience will be beneficial for you, obviously, and if your arms have been twisted by a spouse to get you here, I sure do hope that by the end of these 8 sessions you'll have found it well worth your while, and especially desire, of course, for the children in your life to reap the greatest benefit of the time invested in this course. I'll just tell you a little bit about where this course grew out of. I was teaching university developmental psychology courses and parent-child relations. And after the course, the young parents would come up and say, well, how does this apply to parenting? And we'd head to the faculty club and we'd have discussions, and then soon the crowds grew too large and we had to find bigger spaces, and then they grew too large and we found still bigger spaces, and then moved the course to a continuing education course specifically for parents at the university. And then about, almost 23 years ago now, moved the course out into the communities, and the demand just kept on getting greater and greater. Of course, all the other students, all they were interested in is this going to be on the exam? And I quite enjoyed the interaction with parents and focusing on the application of the material, and this took me on a long journey of putting the pieces together myself over 30 years now, of putting the pieces together from developmental science, and much has happened in developmental science that is tremendously exciting now, and we'll share that with you. The pieces together from research, from my own professional experience as a clinical psychologist, and developmental psychologist. And then while all of this was happening, I was having children, and so added my own personal experience as a father of 5 and now a grandfather of 3. So hopefully you can have a sense that the material has been through a process, tested, and that it makes sense to you from deep inside, that it resonates with your inner intuitions. And the objective, the slant of this course, so to speak, will be to make sense of children from the inside out. I am absolutely convinced, and the more that I've worked with parents and those who work with parents and children, I'm absolutely convinced that the greatest key for changing what we do is insight, is what we see. And if we see differently, we'll end up doing differently. And hopefully, as you listen to this material and interact with material, you can be a bit patient. First of all, suspend your questions of what should I do, and think more about how does this make sense of my Jason, my Sarah. How does it make sense of them from the inside out? And as it makes more sense, then something will automatically change in terms of the interaction. And if all it does is affirm those perceptions and strengthen your interaction, then this course will have done a good deed as well. That it will give greater confidence in the kind of parenting that you're doing. I have called this course, actually this is the first of a 3 series. I've called it The Power to Parent, and altogether there'll be about 24, 25 sessions, but this is the first 8 sessions of these. And I called it The Power to Parent because it seems that this is the missing piece. As parents, we can't fault ourselves, at least nowadays. I think in terms of responsibility, at least not those of you that are here. and not those of you that are taking the course. I think parents are incredibly responsible. But with the most important responsibilities on earth has to come the power to fulfill those responsibilities. You couldn't be given a job, so to speak, an important executive job, be president of a university, and not given the power to be able to execute those responsibilities. We need the power. Power has become a bit of a dirty word in our society. We've seen its abuse. Some of us have experienced its abuse, and yet without it, we can't do our job. And so I've gone right to what I think is a very important construct, is this idea of power, that responsibility without power leads to frustration. And I'm convinced that things are happening in our society that are resulting in parents losing the power they need to parent. And so a lot of frustration is happening when we just don't seem to have the authority, the clout, to do our job, to fulfill our responsibilities. I've called this particular, the beginning series here, this set. Part one of this three-part series, The Vital Connection. And that will make much more sense as we go through these 8 sessions together. This will be the theme of every session. We will be coming back to this, that connection is absolutely vital in parenting. And in many ways, this also has been the missing piece, and that connection and power are absolutely related. And again, we know this in a sense intuitively, but what I hope to do is to bring some consciousness to it, to put some words to it, so that we can parent more with this in mind. These sessions will be divided into various parts, and this session 1, I have labeled here why children need to be in right relationship to the adults responsible for them, and that will become very obvious by the end of this session, and then we'll continue this theme throughout the 8 sessions as we go on. Now I'll start with a question, and how many of you, and I'm sure there are many that will be viewing the video course as well. How many of you have, at least from time to time, experienced difficulty in parenting much more than you ever thought that it would be? Yes, well, almost all of you. I would say estimated a good 80 to 90%. And I'm not surprised, and parenting isn't easy, but I'm going to suggest that parenting is probably more difficult nowadays than it needs to be. That is actually not as easy, not as natural as it has been in times past. This, despite the fact that we have never had more books, and I added one of those, right? That we've never had more experts, and some would call me that as well. That we've never had fewer children to parent, and probably never been so involved with our children. And yet, despite all of these things, that parenting is actually getting more difficult. Why would this be? And I think this brings us to the essential issue in parenting, is that if it was knowledge, then parenting would be easier. If it was fewer children and more leisure, then parenting would be easier. We've never had more leisure. If it was experts, we've never had more access, in a sense, to them, and it is getting more difficult. Now, I'm going to change the question slightly. to access it. Sometimes it's the question we ask that is able to open the window to an answer that we need to see. And I'm going to change the question. The question here is very, very simple. What makes a child easy to parent? What makes a child easy to parent? Now, interestingly enough, that question actually is quite easy to answer. And we could have a discussion here, you and I, and in 10 or 15 minutes, we would come up with a whole list of things, and we don't have 10 and 15 minutes for this, and so we will take a shortcut, and I will put your answers up, we'll pretend they're your answers, up on the screen here, and so we're asking the question, what makes a child easy to parent? One of the first things that I'm sure somebody would say here is a child who listens and attends to you. That makes it a whole lot easier, doesn't it? Wow. Makes it a whole lot easier. A child who takes our cues for what to do, how to act, how to be, what to say. A child who looks to you for those cues. A child who trusts you. It's very hard to parent a child who is in an adversarial relationship, who doesn't believe that you are for them. Very important for a child. If the child will be much easier to parent if the child trusts in you. A child looks up to you, of course, seeks our assistance in things. A child who likes our company. A child who feels at home with us. If a child doesn't feel at home with us, it's very, very difficult when we try to get close and they push away. A child who feels at home with us. A child who follows our lead. How can we be a model if they do not follow? How can we lead them into our values if they are not following? If our following, among our following, must be our children. A child who likes us, obviously, is going to make it much easier. Children are much easier, whether to teach or to parent, when they like to teach when they like their teachers. Much easier. Much easier to parent when they like their parents. A child who likes to please us, that goes a long way. A child who seeks to measure up to our expectations. Have I covered most of your answers already, hopefully? I will. One more here, and we'll get back to this one. This may need some explaining, but it is true that if a child isn't sneaky, that child is a lot easier to parent. If they're not invested, if they don't go by the modus operandi, that whatever mom and dad don't know won't hurt me, and you've got some access to what's happening in their life, especially in adolescence, this is going to make a big difference. If they don't want to have any secrets, especially those that would get them into trouble from you. Now, the question is where do these attributes come from? Is a child born with these? No, you're not born with these. Can you teach a child to be like this? No, you actually can't. These don't respond to being taught. Now, you can teach a child like this many things. If you have a child that you look at this list and say, yeah, I'm doing pretty good. It's all a continuum, of course. But you say, I recognize Trevor in that list, but I don't recognize Sean. Then Trevor is going to be a lot easier to parent than Sean. Right? Absolutely. If you recognize a child, there'll be much more. Now, this is all a continuum, of course, but generally speaking, this is what makes a child much easier to parent. But it's not a result of genetics, and it's not a result of learning. Now, what most people believe today, the prevailing understanding of parenting, is that it is a set of skills. And so the idea is, if you read the right book, if you find the right answer for what to do, then parenting will be easy. The greatest complaint today, of course, is that children aren't born with a manual, right? And that is what the trouble is. I'm going to suggest to you that's not the trouble at all. That if you had 4 children, and you read all the books there were to read, and you knew all there was to know about parenting, And 3 of them you could see in this list of attributes, but 1 you could not. You, with the same know-how, the same knowledge, and the same skill, would find parenting the child that you do not see in these attributes very difficult. Right? So it's not skill. It is not skill. It is not knowledge. That is not where the answer is. And we have been parenting for how many thousands of years? And up until our generation, nobody asked to read a book for it. Or maybe a couple of generations, I should put into there. That it was never thought of as a skill. In fact, in some cultures and some languages, parenting is not even a word. It's not believed to be a skill set. It's rather a place that you have in the children's life. Well, let's take it one more. One more answer that we find is or maybe 2 more answers. If a parent is very responsible, assumes his responsibilities well, does this give rise to these set of attributes? And again, you can see you are the same person, the same responsibilities, the same role. But children will vary tremendously in these attributes, and that will make them either easy or very difficult to parent. Well, what about love? Surely love is the answer. If you loved a child very much, then wouldn't they turn out to be like this? Let me put it another way. If you do not see your child in any of these attributes, you will need a lot of love. That child will need lots of love from you. The children that show these attributes are easy to love. So this can make a child easy or hard to love, but love can't make a child like this. But we're almost there. We're almost at our answer. Because if we just turn it around slightly, but this is the part that seems to be hidden from our view. It's not the love of a parent for a child, but if we cut it to the quick, the essence, what does this speak about? Is the love of a child to the parent. That is, that the child must be, or put it another way, the parent must have the heart of the child to be able to do the job. There must be an emotional connection between the child and the adult for the child to be receptive to parenting and to bring the right instincts of caretaking and responsibility from the parent. And so basically it is the relationship of the child to the adult that makes a child easy to parent. And which brings us to the title of this session, is that children must be in right relationship with their parents, with their teachers, with their grandparents, with their step-parents, for those adults to be able to do their job. Now, what is exciting about developmental science is that we now have a science of relationship, and it's called attachment theory. And it has been the greatest and most important discovery in science. Often science comes lately to the thing that is the most significant, the most important, what is right under our noses, so to speak. And that's exactly what has happened, to realize that the context of attachment, that children attaching to their parents, to their moms, to their dads, to their grandparents, that attachment is the key, the most significant factor. And that's what's happening in our society, is just as we're beginning to understand the role of attachment, we're also beginning to understand that culture is no longer supporting those. And so each of us here in this room, and most everyone who will be watching these video courses in many parts of the world, wherever they are, will be experiencing